In Igbo land, there lived a man named Okeke. Okeke was known throughout the village for his kind heart and gentle spirit. Despite the hardships of life, he remained optimistic and generous, always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. However, Okeke's life was not without its sorrows. He had lost his beloved wife, Adis, during childbirth, leaving him to raise their newborn daughter, Nneka, alone. Nneka was a beautiful child, with eyes as bright as the morning sun and a smile that could light up the darkest of nights. From the moment she was born, Okeke knew that she was destined for greatness. He poured all of his love and affection into her, determined to give her the best possible life. As Nneka grew, so too did her love for the world around her. She spent her days exploring the hills and valleys of her village, marveling at the beauty of nature and the wonders of life. Her laughter echoed through the streets, bringing joy to all who heard it. Despite the happiness that filled their home, Okeke couldn't shake the feeling of loneliness that lingered in his heart. He longed for a companion to share his life with, someone who could help him raise Nneka and keep their home filled with love and laughter. And so, he decided to remarry. Ugochi was a woman from a neighboring village, known for her beauty and charm. She had caught Okeke's eye from the moment they met, and he was smitten with her from the start. They were married in a lavish ceremony, and Ugochi came to live with Okeke and Nneka in their humble home. At first, everything seemed perfect. Ugochi doted on Nneka, showering her with gifts and affection. She cooked delicious meals for Okeke and kept their home clean and tidy. But as time went on, Ugochi's true nature began to reveal itself. Ugochi's jealousy and resentment towards Nneka grew with each passing day. She couldn't stand the thought of sharing Okeke's love with another woman's child, and she made it her mission to make Nneka's life a living hell. She would berate Nneka for the smallest of mistakes, calling her lazy and worthless. She would force her to do all of the household chores while her own children, born to her and Okeke, lounged around without a care in the world. And she would constantly remind Nneka that she was nothing more than a burden, an unwanted reminder of Okeke's past. But despite Ugochi's cruelty, Nneka remained strong. She refused to let her stepmother's words break her spirit, and she continued to find joy and happiness in the simple pleasures of life. She would sing as she walked, her voice echoing through the hills and valleys, a beacon of hope in the darkness. As Nneka grew older, her kindness and compassion only seemed to grow stronger. She would often spend her days helping those in need, whether it be an elderly neighbor in need of assistance or a wounded animal in need of care. Her heart was as big as the sky, and she would do anything to ease the suffering of others. Even the animals of the forest were drawn to Nneka's gentle spirit. They would gather around her as she sang, their eyes filled with wonder and admiration. And Nneka would welcome them with open arms, treating them as if they were her own family. But despite Nneka's acts of kindness, Ugochi's hatred for her only seemed to intensify. She couldn't stand the thought of Nneka being loved and admired by all, while her own children were left in the shadows. And so, she began to devise a wicked plan to rid herself of Nneka once and for all. One fateful day, Ugochi's plan finally came to fruition. She accused Nneka of witchcraft, spreading lies and deceit throughout the village. She claimed that Nneka's kindness was nothing more than a clever disguise, a way to manipulate those around her for her own gain. And she demanded that she be banished from the village, never to return. The villagers were shocked by Ugochi's accusations. They had known Nneka since she was a child, and they could not believe that she was capable of such evil. But fueled by superstition and fear, they began to turn against her, demanding that she be cast out for the safety of the village. With tears in his eyes, Okeke pleaded with the villagers to spare his daughter. He begged them to see the truth, to recognize Nneka for the kind and loving soul that she truly was. But his pleas fell on deaf ears, and Nneka was forced to leave her home behind, her heart heavy with sorrow. And so, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the love in her heart, Nneka set out into the unknown, her future uncertain. But little did she know that her journey was only just beginning, and that the kindness and resilience that had carried her through life so far would guide her on a path filled with adventure, love, and ultimately, redemption. Heart heavy with sorrow, Nneka wandered aimlessly through the forest, her mind filled with thoughts of the home she had been forced to leave behind. With each step she took, the weight of her grief seemed to grow heavier, threatening to crush her spirit beneath its weight. But despite the darkness that threatened to consume her, Nneka refused to give up hope. As she walked, she came across a babbling brook, its clear waters sparkling in the sunlight. Exhausted from her journey, Nneka knelt by the water's edge and drank deeply, feeling the cool liquid soothe her parched throat. And as she drank, she felt a sense of peace wash over her, as if the gentle caress of the breeze was whispering words of comfort in her ear. Refreshed and renewed, Nneka continued on her journey, her heart filled with determination. She knew that she could not return to the village that had rejected her, but she refused to let that stop her from finding a new home and a new family. And so, with each step she took, she moved ever closer to her destiny, guided by the light of hope that burned brightly within her. As Nneka journeyed through the forest, she encountered many obstacles along the way. She faced fierce storms and treacherous terrain, each challenge testing her strength and resolve. But no matter how difficult the path became, Nneka refused to give up. She drew strength from the memories of her home and the love of her father, using them as beacons to guide her through the darkness. Along the way, Nneka encountered many strangers, each with their own stories to tell. Some were kind and generous, offering her food and shelter for the night. Others were wary and suspicious, eyeing her with mistrust and skepticism. But no matter how she was treated, Nneka remained true to herself, offering kindness and compassion to all she met. And as she traveled, Nneka's reputation began to spread throughout the land. Tales of her kindness and generosity reached the ears of those in need, drawing them to her side like moths to a flame. And so, wherever she went, Nneka found herself surrounded by friends and allies, united by a common bond of love and acceptance. Despite the kindness of the strangers she encountered on her journey, Nneka could not shake the feeling of guilt that weighed heavily on her heart. She could not forget the village that had rejected her, nor the family that she had been forced to leave behind. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Nneka's longing for redemption only grew stronger. Determined to make amends for the past, Nneka resolved to seek out those she had wronged and beg for their forgiveness. She traveled from village to village, searching for any sign of her former home and the people she had once called family. But no matter how far she traveled, she could find no trace of them, as if they had vanished from the earth without a trace. Heart heavy with sorrow, Nneka sank to her knees and wept, her tears mingling with the earth beneath her. She felt as if she were lost in a vast sea of darkness, with no hope of ever finding her way home. But even in her darkest hour, Nneka refused to give up hope. For she knew that as long as she held onto the light of love that burned within her, she would never truly be alone. As Nneka continued her search for redemption, she stumbled upon a small village nestled in the heart of the forest. It was unlike any village she had ever seen before, with colorful houses and bustling streets filled with laughter and music. Intrigued, Nneka ventured further into the village, hoping to find someone who could help her on her journey. As she walked, Nneka came across an elderly woman sitting beneath the shade of a towering baobab tree. The woman's eyes sparkled with wisdom, and her face bore the lines of a life well lived. Sensing that this woman might hold the answers she sought, Nneka approached her with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "Excuse me, wise elder," Nneka said, bowing respectfully. "I am in need of guidance. I seek redemption for past wrongs, but I do not know where to begin." The wise elder regarded Nneka with a knowing smile, as if she could see into the depths of her soul. "Child, redemption is not something that can be found in the world around you," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "It is something that must come from within. You must first forgive yourself for the mistakes of the past before you can seek forgiveness from others. Nneka's heart swelled with gratitude at the elder's words. It was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, freeing her from the burden of guilt that had weighed her down for so long. With a newfound sense of purpose, she thanked the elder and set out once more on her journey, her spirit lighter than it had been in months. And as she walked, Nneka vowed to heed the elder's words and to never lose sight of the light of love that burned within her. For she knew that as long as she held onto that light, she would always find her way home, no matter how dark the path may seem. With the wisdom of the elder guiding her, Nneka embarked on the final leg of her journey, determined to seek forgiveness from those she had wronged and to reclaim her rightful place in the village she had once called home. As she walked, memories of her past flooded her mind, both painful and bittersweet. When Nneka finally reached the outskirts of her village, she was greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of home. But as she ventured further into the village, she couldn't help but notice the changes that had taken place in her absence. The streets seemed quieter, the houses shrouded in a veil of sadness. Undeterred, Nneka pressed on, her heart filled with hope and determination. She knew that she had to face her past head-on if she ever hoped to find peace and redemption. And so, with each step she took, she drew closer to the home she had left behind. When Nneka finally reached her father's house, she found it empty and abandoned, the windows shuttered and the doors locked tight. Fear gripped her heart as she wondered what could have happened in her absence. Had her family moved away, leaving her behind forever? With trembling hands, Nneka pushed open the door and stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. And there, standing in the center of the room, was her father, Okek, his eyes filled with tears as he beheld his long-lost daughter. "Nneka," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Is it really you?" With tears streaming down her cheeks, Nneka threw herself into her father's arms, holding him tightly as if afraid that he might disappear if she let go. And in that moment, surrounded by the love of her family, Nneka knew that she had finally found her way home. As Nneka embraced her father, Okek, tears of joy streamed down their faces, washing away the pain and sorrow of the past. For a long moment, they simply held each other, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. When they finally released each other, Okek took a step back to look at his daughter, his eyes filled with wonder and pride. "My dear Nneka," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I never thought I would see you again. I thought you were lost to me forever." Nneka smiled through her tears, her heart bursting with happiness at the sight of her father. "I thought the same of you, father," she said. "But fate has brought us back together, and for that I am grateful." As they talked, Nneka learned of all that had transpired in her absence. She discovered that Ugochi, her wicked stepmother, had been exposed for the lies she had spread about Nneka and had been cast out of the village in disgrace. With her gone, the villagers had come to realize the truth of Nneka's kind heart and gentle spirit, and they had welcomed her back with open arms. But despite the joy of their reunion, Nneka could not shake the feeling of guilt that still lingered in her heart. She knew that she had wronged her father by leaving without a word, and she feared that he would never be able to forgive her for the pain she had caused. Seeing the sadness in his daughter's eyes, Okek reached out and took her hands in his. "My dear Nneka," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "There is nothing to forgive. You were lost to me, but now you are found. That is all that matters." Moved beyond words by her father's forgiveness, Nneka threw her arms around him once more, holding him tightly as if afraid to let go. And in that moment, surrounded by the love of her family and the warmth of their home, Nneka knew that she had finally found the peace and redemption she had been searching for.